Construction does have an impact on the natural environment, no matter how light you aim to tread. Clever design, however, lessens that impact by working with the natural canvas a house sits on. And a home that sympathizes with the surrounding context really does make for a finest home in our books. South African homes have really come into their own over the last few decades. Generic imitations have made way for modern masterpieces and character-filled spaces. Finest Homes explores some of these creations, talking to the visionaries that's bringing them to life. Join us as we explore some of these spaces, showcasing the interior design, architecture, and landscape design. Today's feature house is hidden between the trees at the base of Table Mountain, a project that boasts a unique design on the exterior with its soft curved roof lines and tactile materials. It seems to complement the landscape it sits in rather than fight it. The architect responsible for this incredible design is Macio Mizewski of Merwe Mizewski Architects in Cape Town. Macio, hello! Good to see you.
Hi, hello, hello. Nice to see you too.
This is one incredible property. Now, when you set foot here 10 years ago, what was here before and what was your first thoughts?
There was a derelict house, but beautiful existing trees, which we knew immediately we wanted to retain. But perhaps most importantly, the slopes of the mountain, which are immediately 30 meters away from us. That was the first thing that struck us about how unique the site was.
So what was the original brief from the client and how well did your visions align?
The brief was for a family home. Our visions aligned very quickly from the point of view of how we addressed the site. The clients loved the site, we loved the site, and we wanted to retain its intrinsic natural qualities. So the first device was to avoid a monolithic building, one big block.
Okay.
And we elected to break it up, if you like, into a series of pavilions. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, also to submerge most of it under the ground. So there are parts of the place where you're standing on top of the building, and there are other parts where the building emerges from under the ground. And so you really are aware of a series of separate pavilions, but they actually are all connected. And it's the opposite of building a building on top of the ground. It's building a building in the ground.
I love that there are so many textures and aesthetics around us. Do you want to take us through the flow of the design of the exterior?
Firstly, the stone you see was quarried on the site during excavation.
Yeah.
So it's real Table Mountain granite.
Wow.
And we wanted to express something of the site in the actual finish. Then, because these pavilions are so refined, we wanted to use as much glass as possible, but clearly the glass needed to be protected, so there's a lot of shuttering and awning and horizontal cover and vertical protection from the sun. The other element we've evolved is the roof, the roof slabs, which, as you can see, undulate very gently. And the idea was there that they represent, in a sense, the slopes, the lower slopes of Table Mountain. So it's almost as if you've lifted the surface of the hillside and then slipped a house in underneath.
I love it. Well, Macio, a house that pays homage so beautifully to its natural settings from an exterior perspective, I would be very fascinated to see what's actually happening on the inside. So, shall we go check it out?
Sure.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Macio, from the exterior, it seems that the home pays homage to a lot of natural materials, but when we walk into the kitchen, for instance, it is a very different situation, very modern, very sleek. Tell me more.
So very early in the process, the clients explained to us that they had a great interest in culinary arts, and it became a design process of how to create the ideal bespoke kitchen, because they're so interested in cooking and making their own meals and so on. So it was a design-specific kitchen for its functionality. But we also wanted to introduce as much natural light as possible. So clearly you've got the openings and a herb garden immediately outside. And we bring light in from the back by introducing roof lights.
Yes.
And over there's a staircase that takes you down to the cellar and the garages, and there's in fact a glass floor so that the natural light can filter all the way through.
Into the design of the roof a little bit more. It is absolutely exquisite. What is it made of, and did you encounter any challenges?
So the roof is constructed of off-shutter concrete, which is obviously fluid. And the challenge was in constructing the formwork to support the concrete pour, but also the geometries of it was, really how to determine the curves, the angles, the ups, the downs, and so forth. Fortunately, with the structural engineer and the contractor as a collaboration, we devised a system of bending planks over a rigid frame. And the bent planks, in effect, gave us the shape that we wanted to achieve. You'll notice behind us where there's one particular rise in the shape. That's where you see the cable car at the top of Table Mountain. So it's specifically angled on that view. And then thereafter, it's a case of really just pouring the concrete and letting it set, stripping the shuttering away, and the steel reinforcing is obviously connected to the very few columns. I think there are only 8 columns in this entire space, which are of course free of the walls, holding up this undulating concrete roof.
Concrete is such a versatile material. What other materials from the exterior do we see within the house?
Well, there's a lot of steel, industrial steel. The window framing is in aluminium in order for it to be as minimal as possible. Clearly there's a lot of glass, but there's interest in the selection of the stone tiling, for instance, and a lot of the timber was in fact brought in as repurposed timber from the Far East. It's a particularly good hardwood, and so we knew it would last for a long time.
Macio, I absolutely love the design and flow of the space, from the exterior into the interior, which is so different, so modern, so sleek. Take us through some of the other areas in the home, and what are some of the unique features?
Yeah, we're sitting in the main social space of the house, where you have the lounge, the dining room table, and it all is connected to the kitchen, all at this level. But leading away from here are the more private spaces. There's a guest suite beyond the kitchen, and behind me is a route to the kids' bedrooms, and then above us, also as a separate pavilion, is the main bedroom ensuite. But also from this central social space, there's a staircase down through the library into what is effectively an office and work from home space, which also has a spectacular cellar with a big rock in it, which also came from the Far East. And the lower level is in fact directly connected back to the lawn outside. So it's a sort of loop, connects the house back to the ground.
Well, Macio, you cannot miss the artwork in this home. It is everywhere, and it adds so much character to this space as well. Do you want to tell us more about not only that, but this gorgeous bookshelf as well?
Well, the artwork was always part of the conversation, and the owners have collected, as you can see, many artworks, artifacts, as well as a massive collection of books and magazines, some of which I believe are quite rare. So it was a case of both displaying the books, but also being able to access them. So as you can see, there's a long ladder, which gives you access to all the shelves. And by making it a double volume space, it became more of a feature that one can enjoy as one walks down the staircase. The books and so on couldn't be exposed to direct sunlight, and so we introduced recessed lighting in the shelving structure to backlight the artifacts in the books.
Stay with us as after the break we continue our house tour to take a closer look at the unique eco-friendly swimming pool. In today's episode of Finest Homes, we're visiting a house set against the slopes of Table Mountain. Unique in its conscious design, it seems to blend in and even mimics its surroundings. Architect Macio Mizewski guided us through the space, sharing his approach and execution of this masterpiece. Wow, this is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the trees, like how everything is just kind of built around the trees as well. It's so gorgeous. One of the standout features of this finest home is the inviting pool that's good enough to drink from. Jerome Davis of Eco Pools was responsible for this incredible design and installation. Jerome, for anyone who's not familiar with the concept of an eco pool or a natural swimming pool, how would you describe it?
Well, it's a swimming pool, but instead of using chemicals to keep the water clear and the pool clean, we use a natural ecosystem.
Okay.
And that is plants and microbes and little animals that then all absorb all the nutrients that would normally grow algae, and that makes it really easy to maintain and kind of a viable alternative.
I love this because I think so many people are returning back to nature. We're trying to tread more lightly upon the earth.
Yep.
Would that be one of the reasons people would want to incorporate an eco pool into their homes?
Yeah, that's definitely a big motivating factor. And the low maintenance is another factor because, battling with a chemical pool is such a horrible thing to have to do. You have to handle the chemicals, you have to test the pH, you've got to constantly be on it.
Yeah.
But when there's a natural ecosystem, it kind of looks after itself to a large extent. I mean, there's minimal maintenance that you have to do, but if you don't do it, you don't freak out, it doesn't kind of turn green because it's got a kind of a built-in natural intelligence to it. But there's all sorts of other reasons. I mean, I think that the health benefit is enormous as well. Just besides the fact that it's an eco installation, they're much healthier. I mean, can you imagine what it does to your body to be in chlorine? I mean, it can't be good for you. Where if you've got conscious water in your life, which is, by the way, you never interacted, either the sea or if you go and live in a dam, or a natural pool. All the other water that we encounter in our lives is dead and unconscious. Showering, bathing, swimming in a normal pool. It doesn't elevate anything's consciousness. But this, if people just start to understand that sterile is not necessarily clean, it can change the consciousness of children, of people living with it, and it really can make a difference. And that's our whole mission.
And what was your brief from the client for this project?
It was, it's a large pool. And we had certain details. It's always in the details. So one of the details was that we had to have this clean edge onto the lawn. We had to have a pool cover, and it had to be heated. Not that it had to be heated, but they had heat from the floors, from the solar heated floors, that in summer you need to dump that heat somewhere. And so the pool was the best place to dump that excess heat. So that's one of the complications that we had to deal with, because the biological system doesn't handle heat as well as it handles cold. So we had to find a way to reticulate the water in such a way that the heat didn't affect the function of the pool. Another brief was that it had to be super low energy. So we used an air-driven system rather than our normal pumping system. And it is also a fire pool. So it's big enough to use the water. If there's a fire in the house, there's a pump that's connected to that, and it can be used to put out any fires, because we're right up against the mountain here, so there is a risk of fire sweeping down. And so that's our water reservoir. Not only that, there's also tiles in the bottom of the pool. So there's special tiles that had to be the particular finish. Then it is divided into two zones. So you've got the swimming pool zone, which is an open water body for people to swim in. And then there's the eco zone, which is next to it. And the eco zone, again, is divided into two sections. There's a deep kind of gravel bed, which is filled with various gravels at various grades. That is what grows the plants that you can see kind of growing out of it. And then there's the lily zone, what we call a lily zone, which has got submerged vegetation coming out of it. And they needed this kind of bigger swimming lane, but then a shallower area for kids that is much wider. So it was just integrating all of those designs, putting all of those details together. That was kind of a complicated brief, actually.
Wow, quite a mission.
Well, I mean,
love it.
It's a beautiful mission. I mean, everything's a mission, you know, it's the hero's journey, you know.
Yeah.
It feels, oh, when you're in it, it's, oh my God, this is so difficult. But then at the end of it, when you stand back and you look at it with the client and they love it, I mean, they love it, you know, and it's so good to stand with somebody and know that you've created something that people will love forever.
After the break, we sit down with Brandon James Dow of Studio James to get his take on a nature-inspired design scheme. In today's episode of Finest Homes, we're visiting a house designed by architect Macio Mizewski. A house that stands out in its own right, yet blends in with its natural environment. It's a layered execution of grounding materials with a concrete roof that seems to effortlessly float above the house. Macio walked us through different spaces and shared some insight into the love and labor that went into this project. We also met up with Jerome Davis from Eco Pools to dive into the technicalities of the natural swimming pool found on the property, a feature that lures the owners on a daily basis and attracts all kinds of wildlife. Hovering on the idea of design inspired by nature, we sat down with Brandon James Dow of Studio James to get his take on a decor design scheme that speaks to elements from nature. Studio James is an interior design and 3D rendering studio based in the heart of Cape Town.
When I think of nature-inspired design, I think of the connection to the outdoors, how you relate, how you live to your garden surroundings. This could be via an architectural breezeway or really large stacking doors. When it comes to a nature-inspired interior, you want to see tactile fabrics, natural rugs, furnishings that are comfortable and relate to the outdoor surroundings. Furniture pieces like a carved stone tabletop or raw timber door front on your cabinet. To tie into your interior scheme, you can introduce objets that comes in the form of beautiful organic shapes that look like carved stone. When it comes to color and pattern, we can take inspiration from our natural surroundings. That could be in your scattered cushions in a beautiful botanical pattern. You can also pull out colors within that pattern that can be used throughout the design of the home. When it comes to paint colors, I would suggest keeping your base palette on the neutral side. That way you can allow the rest of the color in the house to stand out in your furnishings, in your scattered cushions, and the way that you style the house. A go-to tip when doing a nature-inspired interior would be bringing nature in, using indoor plants, which offers a variety of texture and color. Another great tip is using what you have, foraging in your own garden, finding branches and beautiful leaves that can stand in a vase.
That's it for this week. Do join us again next week as we bring you another Finest Home.